أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة المتقين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء المرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين اللهم ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. My beloved brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Again, ahlan wa sahlan. Welcome to our Masjid Al Wali Chai Chat. As usual, we have this program every Wednesday at 7. Inshallah, next week, because of time change, we will be having it at 8 p.m. Inshallah. And I have as my guest here tonight my very good friend and brother, Salahuddin Maqsood, is a third generation Turkish American Muslim and a lifelong resident of New Jersey. Since 2019, Salahuddin has served as the executive director of CARE in New Jersey, the Council of American Islamic Relations in New Jersey chapter, America's largest Muslim civil rights and advocacy group. In his position as executive director, Salahuddin works to enhance the understanding of Islam, encourage dialogue, protect civil liberties, empower American Muslims, and build coalitions that promote justice and mutual understanding. So Salahuddin in 2017 received his bachelor's degree in religious studies from New York University. In 2019, he received his master's degree in Islamic studies from Columbia University. He traveled widely, like Egypt, Jordan, Turkey, in the Balkans, for academic and traditional studies of Islam, of Muslim society. So I am very, very happy, I must say, to my brother Salahuddin, as they say in Ertugrul, Aywala.
Eyvallah, alhamdulillah. Thank you for having me. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah.
Alaikum salam, and welcome to Masjid Al Wali Chai Chat.
Alhamdulillah, happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on. My dear brothers and sisters, you have noticed Salahuddin is a very young man, and he has been very much involved with Islamic communities in New Jersey. And he went through his academics and also some Islamic studies and Islamic traditional studies. So I want to, as we chat before, Brother Salahuddin, that this program basically caters for the next generation. And we really want to empower them, basically. So I want you to tell our young viewers and also their parents the importance of being active on campus, because it is very important that we should not be unapologetic, and we should be, very proud Muslims, and in the sense that even when there are people who are not Muslims, we should still identify ourselves and to be identified as Muslims. Just to say something to our young people to give them that confidence.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for having me, Brother Mujay. Alhamdulillah, it's really a pleasure to be here and to be with the Masjid Al Wali community. MashaAllah, you guys are doing amazing work. So Jazakumullah khairan, and thank you for having me. Alhamdulillah. So Bismillah. Yes, being unapologetically Muslim and being proud of your identity as a Muslim is what we champion here at CARE, and what I've always championed, whether it was a student in high school or it was an undergrad or in graduate school. In a lot of these spaces, as an American, you're predominantly surrounded by non-Muslims. And if you take your Islam seriously, it is at the forefront of who you are and how you identify yourself and how you understand the world around you. So what I always say and what I always believe is that, you wear your deen or your Islam, on your sleeve, or really like it's visible, in your character and in your who you are. So it should never be something that you should be ashamed of, right? It's something that you're always happy and honored to share it with other people, whether it's your teachers or your fellow students, or strangers, or wherever you may be, co-workers, employees, employers, etc. So it's definitely been something that I've taken very seriously, even when I was in high school. Always, entering into conversations with non-Muslims about, my identity as a Muslim and about my Islam. And then that really propelled me into my undergraduate years, where I took seriously, my deen, and I never shied away from expressing it and talking about it with others. So if you haven't already noticed, I'm much more pale skin, right, and white, right? So a lot of people, when they see me, they don't think I'm Muslim. I'm not wearing a kufi. I'm not wearing anything on my head. I don't have a large beard. Thanks to being Turkish, we don't have the privilege of growing a large beard like most people. And then, so nothing outwardly says this man is Muslim until I tell them, right? I take it upon myself to bring it upon the conversation and say that I'm Muslim, right? And it's very easy for me to get away with, this. They can say, oh, he's Italian, maybe he's Catholic, maybe he's this, maybe he's American, et cetera, et cetera. But I always thought it was important to bring it into the conversation where it was appropriate, where it made sense. And no, for me, it's always been about being unapologetically Muslim, and not hiding my deen, not erasing who I am, and letting people know that this is what makes me who I am, and this is what drives me, right? This is what motivates me, and this is what gives me purpose. So this is something I always encourage people to take on.
My curiosity is yourself being a third generation Turkish American Muslim, right? In high school, in college, and what are some of the challenges? Because these are the very challenges that a lot of immigrant Muslims would go through. How can they learn from your experience being a third generation Turkish American Muslim?
I think the one thing is we underestimate other people's interest or curiosity in the unknown, right? So the one thing I've always learned, and I've always, and I continue to remind myself of, is be open to the idea of conversing with other people and just showing them a whole new world that they would never come across, right? And the one thing that we always talk about at CARE is the best way to combat Islamophobia and anti-Muslim rhetoric is by being a pious, practicing, unapologetic, and proud Muslim. And this is a natural form of da'wah, right? A natural way to educate people and just show them an example of what happens when you implement Islam into the life of a person. And when they're able to see this and observe this in conversation with you, in working with business deals with you, or in school or at work, this opens up a whole new world for them, and it breaks down barriers for them, and it gives them a face and a name that they can now understand, what is Islam and what does it mean and how does it impact this person's life. So be willing to have conversations with people and be willing to just be vulnerable with them and learn with them, and they can teach you something and you'll be able to teach them something. And this is in all aspects of life.
Yeah. The thing about Salahuddin is that to our young viewers out there, how do you advise them to go about choosing a major? I mean, I have noticed, yourself having a bachelor's in Islamic studies and a master's degree also. How have you really get about choosing that kind of mindset?
That's a great question, and it's one that we'll always wrestle with. For me, when I was in high school, I was surrounded by predominantly non-Muslims, and I grew up around, the aftermath of 9/11, and I was motivated by a desire to learn more about Islam and to combat a lot of the negative rhetoric. So I went into the field of Islamic studies and religious studies to be able to research and contribute to the discipline and to the conversations and combat a lot of the negative rhetoric. So this is why I went in that direction. But for me, it was the passion. Like, I was obsessed with studying about Islam. My parents thought I was crazy. I was buying books on Amazon, having my father purchase books for me when I was younger. But they saw, alhamdulillah, for me, I had the privilege of having parents that acknowledged that this was a passion of mine, and they saw that this is what motivated me, and they let me go in this direction. And I also acknowledge that there are parents out there, especially in our community, that they want their children to go into careers where the end goal is much more clear, and it's much more safe in regards to job opportunities, but be it a doctor or engineer, attorney, etc. In the field of academia and Islamic studies and religious studies, it's much less defined. So it's a bit more scary and a bit more of a risk taking to enter into this discipline. But if you have the mindset and you have the drive and the passion like I did, you can do great things. And my parents, alhamdulillah, they saw this in me, so they let me pursue this direction. And alhamdulillah, I make dua every day for them, because for me, it was a blessing and a joy to be able to go in this direction. So I thank them so much for giving me that opportunity. So alhamdulillah, may Allah reward them for all that they do.
I mean, actually, of course, being a Turkish, also you being a Turkish, you came from a very rich Islamic history, the Ottoman history. How much that history has really what you call dominate your thinking and help to influence you, because the Ottoman period of Islamic history has been a very rich and elegant history of the Muslim.
Alhamdulillah, that's very true. And it was the last empire that ruled, and before it collapsed in 1923. It's funny. My grandfather used to identify as, or kind of half jokingly identify as Ottoman. So it's funny because my family, we're Turkish, right, as you mentioned, but we're not from what is today Turkey proper. So we are actually diaspora Turks from Eastern Europe. And when the Ottoman Empire collapsed in 1923, the Turks that were not in the physical borders, they just remained where they were. So there were Turks in Bulgaria, Macedonia, Kosovo, Serbia, in Iraq and Syria. Some of them moved to Turkey, some of them remained, right? So my grandparents on both sides are from the Balkans. And yeah, our Turkish identity is definitely what carries, our Islam, and it informs our Islam, and it informs our culture and our way of life and our thinking. And it was a very important part of our life. But my grandfather would always say, we're like Ottoman Turks, we're the real Ottomans. And these modern Turks, they don't know the real history, the real tradition. But he would always joke about that. But alhamdulillah. And now, of course, we have the opportunity to learn about this Turkish history thanks to Ertuğrul and the wave that has taken over the world.
So that's been a very good show, actually. I'm a great fan of that show also.
Alhamdulillah. It's given a lot of people inspiration and pride, and it given us a good example of a way to just look up to Muslim role models. And obviously it's romanticized, of course, as most films are. But it's a great show.
But there are a lot of positive spin actually on that.
Absolutely.
Coming back to our youngsters, right? As you said, after you're choosing, that path or that career that you want to, in terms of developing that particular academia, how were you able to pursue that? I mean, what was the drive in you, and what were some of the obstacles that you find yourself?
That's a good point. And there were, of course, many. The one thing I would always advise, if anyone wants to go into the humanities, especially in Islamic studies or religious studies, is to have a firm, deep root and understanding in their deen first. And why do I say this? Why is this a red big disclaimer? Because a lot of these institutions, the liberal institutions, will challenge the way you understand Islam and the way you think about the world. So if you want to take on this task of going into Islamic studies, which I encourage people to consider, because Muslims need to be at the table and talking about these things. Otherwise, other people will do it for us. And we want to be able to control the dialogue and the conversation. So if you're going to go into these fields, go ahead and do it. but make sure you really have an understanding of the deen. Maybe have a sheikh that you consult frequently, and have the conversations with the sheikh so that you can, again, have a deeper understanding of Islam before you go into these spaces and play with fire in a lot of academia, which again, I encourage you to go into these spaces, but go into it with an understanding of Islam, because you can walk away in a different direction you might not have expected. But one other point that I want to make mention of, and it's a point that I wish I told myself when I was younger, is never underestimate what you can learn from strangers, from anyone. You might see someone, you might think, oh, this person, maybe they can't contribute anything to my career or my understanding of the world, or what do they have to offer me? Don't think this way. You can learn a lot from friends, from strangers, from professors. Just have conversations and pick their brain and let them talk, and you just absorb and soak it all in. And I think that's really an important thing, that young people should be willing to have conversations with everybody and anybody and learn from anyone.
Yeah. I'm not sure if I'm correct, but I think probably you're the one of the youngest executive director for CARE chapters.
Yes, alhamdulillah.
MashaAllah. So New Jersey, we have the youngest executive director for CARE, which is a national organization, civil rights organization that works to help people in many different challenges. So how were you able to transition from where you were to activism like CARE and other stuff, and in terms of justice and civil liberties? I mean, what was that passion and the drive in you that our young kids need to understand?
It's a very important question. Alhamdulillah. Thank you for asking. So my switch from academia and to what is now this civil rights, organization, was a real change for me. But I'm so happy I took the change and the jump. So in academia, it's a lot of studying and reading, and you're working on publishing things, and you're in the library, and you're having nuanced conversations with people, and you're thinking very critically about how you can solve problems and think deeply. And I loved it. It was a passion of mine. But what was lacking for me was taking action, tangible steps to address the issues that we were talking about in the classroom. And for me, I saw this opportunity come up at CARE New Jersey. I had just graduated from Columbia, and I was kind of actually applying for PhD programs. But the opportunity at CARE New Jersey presented itself, and I thought to myself, this is an avenue that I can take, and I can use this position as a way to bring about tangible, measurable steps of benefit for the community, right? And that's why I love my job so much, because every day I interact with people and I can help them, and I can be a resource to them, and I can use our office and the staff and all of the expertise that we have here to the benefit of the community. And the way I see it is my academic studies have informed my activism. And now I go from those conversations in the classroom, and I'm now implementing what I learned in the field. I'm taking steps to actually actualize my learning and manifest my learning in reality. And just, alhamdulillah, I'm able to use my hands to benefit the community. And that's why I find it so rewarding. But alhamdulillah, yeah.
I mean, we must say, thank you for serving CARE New Jersey, and that's been a big shift from where you were and to where you want to go, because as you have said, that being in this kind of activism helps you to bring your knowledge, your academic and your academia into practical implementation into the society, into the community. So talk a little about care and your involvement defending and educating and empowering American Muslims. Talk a little about it.
Absolutely. It's it's been such an honor, really, to be serving in this capacity, because the basics of what we do is we provide free legal service for anyone that faces harassment or discrimination on the basis of their race or religion. So if there are Muslims facing harassment in public or discrimination on the job, or if they're being spied on by the FBI or the CIA, or if they're being detained in the airports, or if there are politicians spewing anti-Muslim rhetoric, or community leaders spewing anti-Muslim rhetoric, we combat these things and we take these things to the courts. So we use the law to fight racism. But the other side of what we do is kind of like the advocacy and the media work. So the courtroom is one aspect, but the newsroom is the other half of our work, right? And we work with the media to push a more positive image of Islam and Muslims. And we combat this negative rhetoric that is all too prevalent in society. So this is the basics of what our work does. We're defending people, free legal services, but we're also educating them. We're educating non-Muslims about Islam. As a matter of fact, alhamdulillah, this is an example of some of the things that we do. I had Burlington Coat Factory, some people, or now it's called Burlington. They reached out to our office proactively, and they're asking us to give their administrative staff at a national level of 200 people, I think, a crash course on Ramadan. So Ramadan 101, because they want to understand
what is it's like a sensitive training, right?
Exactly. But they also want to be able to accommodate their Muslim employees.
Right.
So they're thinking, how can we make this workspace a place welcoming for Muslims? So they're learning about the sensitivity trainings, as you mentioned, and they want to have dialogue. They want to learn. So this is what we do. We educate non-Muslims and companies and corporations and politicians. We advocate for certain legislation that we are in favor of. And we work with the media, and we do all of these things in order to kind of pioneer and champion Islam in America. Because we have to remember that we are the khulafa, right? The custodians of Allah Azza wa Jal in America. And it's our responsibility to champion the banner of Islam. Because if we don't do it, who's going to do it, right? So it's the responsibility falls on our shoulders. And if we're proud of this deen, and we are proud of our community, then we should be at the forefront of these issues, and we should be fighting, we should be educating, and we should be empowering our community members. But alhamdulillah, this is the work that we do. And inshallah, we're growing. We're very excited to be growing our chapter. But alhamdulillah.
Thanks very much, man. Here, I think we have time for one more question before I take you on a rapid round of questions. I want you to talk to our young kids out there, high schoolers, and get into the door of the college and stuff like that. How can they live going through this academic studies, to live a purposeful life? How would they be able to, in terms of being have a purposeful life, and to keep them hopeful? Because part of Islam is hope and fear goes hand in hand, right? Yes. You hope and fear in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that in itself is that's a way of getting success at the end of the journey. So how would you advise them to maintain and to have a purposeful life in college?
Right. An amazing question, and it's one that we could go on and on about, and we would need a webinar series to discuss. So alhamdulillah, this is a beautiful question. And may Allah Azza wa Jal give us all that purpose, right, that drives us. And that purpose, of course, is Islam, right? The worship of Allah Azza wa Jal, the ibadah of Allah Azza wa Jal. And yes, as you mentioned, Islam is this kind of middle path, right? It's hope and love of Allah, and it's also fear, right? And these things in balance. Islam is a religion of balance, right? It's a religion of the middle path. So yes, being able to pursue a career and to find joy in it, and have a happy and successful path through this requires that you root yourself firmly in the deen that gives you purpose and that gives you an understanding of your place in the world, right? So we can go about life, like mindlessly, and we just don't feel like there's any meaning to it. And that's toxic, that's problematic, that can cause mental health issues, and that can cause strain on yourself and your family and your relationships, right? But if you give yourself meaning and purpose, and you realize that you are a small aspect in a greater picture of things, and you're contributing to that, and you are a part of a bigger picture, then that gives you a sense of like hope and like a drive, right? And you're not just here for nothing. You weren't just placed on this earth for nothing, but that there's actually something behind the scenes, right? That's giving you that purpose. And of course that is Islam, right? And so allow Islam to be like, the torch in the darkness, right? The hope and the inspiration that guides you and that keeps you optimistic. It's very important to stay optimistic, even though the world is a dark place and we're fighting, dark, whether it's racism or oppression overseas. It's important to stay optimistic and to realize that you have a lot to contribute to the world, and that you should be ready and eager to participate. But yeah.
Alhamdulillah. I pray Allah bless all our young people out there. Amen. And give them a vision for their future, give them a vision for their life in this dunya, and also a vision for the akhirah, because you have to use this dunya to secure the akhirah. It's very, very important, inshallah. And I know that all our youngsters out there are very purposeful and they are very energetic and they can able to do this, inshallah. Thank you so much, Salahuddin, for coming on. But just before I let you go, as all my guests, I have a rapid round of questions. I purposefully not mention these questions to you. I want to see how you would respond to them. So first one, do you have anything pending in your bucket list?
Oh, well, this might sound cliche, but I haven't gone to Hajj yet. So that's top of the list. But I'm a big traveler, so hopefully when COVID is over, inshallah, to continue traveling.
Inshallah.
Hajj is at the top of the list, inshallah. May Allah make that a reality.
I think many people, I myself, can't wait for COVID to over. I also love traveling. I miss traveling. One of my greatest trip was in Turkey, actually.
MashaAllah.
One of my best trip. Yeah.
Alhamdulillah.
Next question. If you could go anywhere in the world, where would you go and why?
Oh, I can't say Hajj now because I just said that.
Something else other than Hajj.
Something else out of that. I've always wanted to go to Morocco. So that's been like at the top of the list as well. Beautiful. The pictures I've seen and the history there is extensive. So inshallah, Morocco is top of the list.
Mashallah. I did that last year.
Oh, mashallah.
Just before COVID, actually.
I'll have to call you before I make the trip and let you know.
Inshallah. What's your favorite food?
Oof. So
I know Turkish have lots of food. I mean, they're known for their cuisine, right?
Alhamdulillah. All the kebabs, mashallah, and the chicken the shish kebabs. But actually, it's not any of these meat dishes. It's my grandmother's. I don't know how to describe it. It's like a pita, we call it, and it's a layered phyllo dough and cheese, cottage cheese, and it's layered, thin layers of phyllo dough and cheese, and it's greasy and oily and not good for you and unhealthy, but it's absolutely amazing. And if you come to my house, my grandmother will make you a pie and.
Inshallah, I have to book you up one day. I have to book you up for that one day, inshallah.
I'll bring it to the masjid.
Are you a morning or a night person?
Wow. I have been fighting all my life to become a morning person, but I'm typically a night person. But inshallah, one day I'll become a morning person because I think the mornings are better. But yeah.
Inshallah, inshallah. What is your hobby? Do you have hobbies?
So during COVID, we picked up biking. So we do a lot of biking, and we just travel around outside. When it's warmer weather, we go biking extensively throughout the woods or the streets or anywhere. But yeah.
Inshallah. What is the strangest thing you have ever eaten?
Mm. Okay, maybe two things. So it's a Turkish dish. It's a Turkish soup, and I think it uses sheep brain.
Really?
Yeah. So
Mashallah.
brain in the soup, and then
That's good. That's good stuff, man. That's good stuff, bro.
Yeah, my grandmother makes it all the time. And then my other grandmother, this is gonna be crazy. I didn't eat this, but my other grandmother, she made cow tongue.
Again, that's good too.
Yeah, so the interesting dishes. Turkish cuisine is something else.
All right. One final question. If you could get yourself anything, what would you get yourself?
Oh, a second mug, because I want one for the office and one for home.
Are you putting me under pressure now?
Maybe. I'll come next Friday to pick it up.
Inshallah. No problem, man. Inshallah. All right, Sahaddin, it's a pleasure meeting you. And as I say in Turkish, Eyvallah.
Eyvallah. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah.
Thank you so much to our viewers. If you just join us, this was Salahuddin Maksud, Executive Director of CARE New Jersey, youngest Executive Director in the CARE chapter. I'm so thankful for having you. And inshallah, I'm looking forward to doing some work with you, inshallah, in the communities. And I know we can do some great things together, inshallah. So thank you again for coming on. May Allah bless you. May Allah bless your family. For our session next week, because of time change, inshallah, instead of having it at 7, we will be starting our chai chat at 8 p.m. starting next Wednesday, because time change, Sunday coming, inshallah. So therefore, we will be actually spring forward for an hour. So inshallah, our session chai chat, inshallah, will be at 8 p.m. next week. So see you guys, and until then, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.